Welcome to Steve Tech Arc. Today we're going to be going through Steve's quick REST callout example. These are the basic steps to making a REST callout, and we're going to be using a web service that's available in the trailheads. It's a very simple one, retrieves a list of animals. So what we're going to be doing today is covering just the basic steps that I recommend for getting familiar with making an outbound REST call. First, get to know your external site. You need to know how to call it, and you need to know what it looks like when it gives you the results back. So you should definitely, I highly suggest that you use Postman in order to examine it before you begin. Number two, you're going to be leaving Salesforce and you're going to be making an external call. Salesforce requires that it know about that. So quick way to do that is to set up a remote site. Number three, decide what you're going to do with the data when you get it back. Are you just going to debug it, or are you going to write it to an object? Number four, write your code. That's the code in order to make that call out and process the results. And number five, the basic steps to being able to run that code and do any basic level debugging. Now we're going to walk through those steps. So the first step is know your service. If you look up here, I have Postman. I have a call, and this is the URL to the service, th apex http callout to a Heroku app. I'm going to do a basic unauthenticated get, and I'm going to hit send, and we can see the payload that's coming in the response. We can see that this is a JSON payload. We can see that it has an attribute of animals, and inside that attribute of animals, it's giving us a list of strings of the animals. So that tells us some really important information about the calling mechanism. Here is the URL, and it tells us about the return. And it tells us that this is the bracket object, gives us an animals single attribute. And then this bracket tells us it's a list. So therefore, it's a list of strings. So this is all very helpful information. Now what we're going to do is our next step is to create the remote site setting. What you can hear is you will go up into Salesforce and go remote site settings. And I've created this animal service. And this animal service just has a name, animals1, and it has the basic URL right here that will allow Salesforce to permit outbound IP traffic. So this allows you to exit Salesforce. So that's step number two, which is create the remote site. Three, know what you're going to do with it. So what I've done is I've created this animal object that we're going to set up in this example. So it's just an animal custom object, and it just has the fields eats, says, which we'll see a little later, but it's just an animal object, and we're going to that we'll be using to capture this data. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some code that I wrote, and we're going to enhance it. So here is some basic code. It's a public class animal service. And I've written a static method called getAnimals. So here are your basic steps to making an outbound web service call. One, call the HTTP object. This gives you the handle to the HTTP mechanism. Number two, you're going to create a request, and you're going to tell it which method, which verb of the REST calls you're going to use. We're going to do a get, and we're going to set the endpoint. So here we are adding that same endpoint right now with the /animals, and you saw that we tested that in Postman. We're then going to get an HTTP response, which is just a simple request, HTTP send request. We're going to check to see if it's a 200, and a 200 means that it was successful. Now we're going to get the data back in a string. So this is a JSON. Now this is where there are a lot of different ways in which you can handle the response coming back if it's JSON. What you can do is you can do a basic JSON parsing. You can do custom code. I'm going to show you a neat thing where I'm just creating a class called an animal response. Now, because I know this comes in as a single object, because it's got the single brackets with an animals attribute of string, what I've done is I've crafted a class that matches that response. So I have a class animal response with an attribute of animals. So this matches what I expect to get back. And what I can do is first I'm going to get the JSON back in line 16. I'm going to then debug it so I can examine it in my debugger. But I'm also going to use the JSON deserialize method. So this little method allows me to pass in the JSON response. It allows me to tell Salesforce which class to deserialize it into. And now I've got that in this class. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to iterate over that attribute and do a debug. So the actual call is only 4 or 5 lines of code right here just to make the HTTP, create the request, build the response, and the call has actually been made. Now, once I have the response, make sure it's successful, get the body, parse it into something you can handle. I chose to create it into this class right here, deserialize it and debug it. Now then the next step is running this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go to the debugger. So what you can do is you can go to Salesforce Developer Console. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to debug, execute anonymous. And here I created a class called animal service, get animals. And what I can do is I can execute this code. What I like to do is instead of seeing all the details of the debugger, I just go to debug only. And now you'll see that I'm getting the animals and then it's looping through one by one: majestic bear, fluffy bunny, scary bear, and chicken. So what this is doing is let's actually go, we'll demonstrate that this is running. So we're going to go right here. We're going to go result, JSON. So this will give us the raw JSON. And then we're going to go and this will be row :1 and then plus the A row. So here I am. I can go quick save. I can go to my developer console, execute anonymous, execute. And you can see that there I am getting the JSON row. Now, what if we want to store this in Salesforce? What we can do is we have created an animal object. And so I'm going to then create a list of animals. So we're going to go animal. We're actually going to create a list of animal. A obj equals new, a list. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each row and I'm going to go animal a new equals new animal. And I could do shorthand notation, but I'm going to write it out. I'm just going to go a new dot name equals a row. So I'm taking the returned results, coming back in this loop, and I'm going to assign it to the name. And then I'm going to add the animal to the A list. And we're going to add the A new, the animal new. So now what I've done is I've created a new animal object, add to the list, and then last thing I'm going to do is do insert a list. So we're going to do a quick save. And I'm going to demonstrate that what I have is I have a tab right here. And this is a tab for animals. We're going to go all and refresh. So there are no animals stored yet. So what we've now done is created a new list of animal right here on line 23. We're now creating a new animal, reading the row from the response, adding it, and inserting the animals. Let's go ahead and debug, execute anonymous, and execute. So we now have the same result, but the difference is we're now going to go to our list right here and hit refresh. And now you see we have created chicken, fluffy bunny, majestic bear, and scary bear. So again, let's go through the steps that we followed in order to do this. So number one, know your data, and we examined the request coming in. Number two, create your remote site, And here, Salesforce will allow the outgoing call. Number 3 is create the target object, and that's where we created the animal object. Number 4, write your code. And here you've seen with just a handful of code, we now have it. And we then debugged using the developer console. So just to review, know your REST service, set up the remote site, know your target. What are you going to do with the data? Write the code, and then be able to run and debug. Hope this was helpful. So thank you. This was Steve Simpson. I'm a leader of the Phoenix Architect Group, and look forward to helping you out with any additional items. Thank you.